You know those face in the game regens you see in every save? That guy that rocks up at Liverpool 10 years into your save and ruins your Champions League run by being, well, extra. What if I told you you could make your own? Well, today I'm going to show you how to do just that. So after my Aaron Walker agent video from the back end of FM23, I had a lot of questions about how I actually got the game to create him for me, so I figured the best thing to do would be to make a video about it, and this is that. I've checked and this does work for the FM24 beta. There is a little caveat to that, which we'll get to later because it's bloody hilarious. But for your normal use case, this should work totally fine. Before we get into the how, I just want to quickly explain what you can do with this, because there are some limitations, but honestly, nowhere near as many as you'd think. This is the system that I'm going to be using to add your custom regens from the Patreon perk into the multi-save as well, but I wanted to show you guys how it works so that you could do it yourself for your own saves. So what this method allows you to do is before you start a save, you can tell the game that at the time of your choosing, it will spawn in a regen for you at a club of your choosing with all sorts of predefined aspects. Now, the big caveat for the beta is that the year of your choosing part is a little bit up in the air at the moment, and hopefully that's something they'll fix for the full release of the game. Otherwise, historic databases that you may have enjoyed over the last few years may not work on FM24. I suspect that they will fix that though. But when it all works correctly, you should be presented in the first youth intake with the player that you have pre-programmed. I just put Aaron's stuff in from the previous one so that you can see that we can generate the exact same player at the exact same club with the same sort of attributes in FM24. Now, the beta caveat is that at the moment, for some reason, the game is ignoring when to generate the players, and it is just trying to put them in at the first season no matter what you do, which led to some quite hilarious results, which I'm going to show you now. Essentially, I was trying to test if you could get it to generate players in future seasons, and so I was trying to make a guy that would spawn a few years later, accidentally made a typo. The game dumped him in first season anyway, and I accidentally created a player that isn't going to be born for another 20,000 years. So I don't think that part of it's working exactly as intended, because I was able to create an immortal child. There is a workaround. We'll circle back to that later once we actually get into the nitty-gritty. I just wanted to show you this. Now, there's a huge list of things that you can control with this, which we'll get into properly later, but the most important things is that you can control the player's first name, surname, nationality, a lot of attributes about the player's appearance, including their height and weight, and more importantly, even their CA and PA. So you can see that it's already pretty powerful. Now, you may want to do this for any number of reasons, from simply wanting to put yourself to spawn at the club that you support so that you can assign yourself, which is just kind of cool, to wild and wacky experiments, the likes of which you're very likely to see on this channel over the course of the next year, potentially even involving the 20,000-year-old child. Now, I haven't had a chance to test every single possible scenario with each of the different things that you can control, but everything seems to be working in the way that I would like it to currently, so I have no reason to suggest that it won't for you as well. So, how does this work? It works using something called a .edt file. Now, those of you that have installed name fixes every year will maybe have some familiarity with these, even if you've never looked inside them, but don't worry if you're not, because I'm going to explain them anyway. But essentially, they are small files that the game will check when you first create a brand new save, which it will use to set certain parameters and variables within that save. Just using this random one that's designed to handle transfer embargoes for the moment, just to show you how they work, you can see that this one is designed to give Reading and Derby sort of player embargoes. I'm not exactly sure what that means. The key thing is, though, if you were to mess with these numbers here, then save this file. When you create a new save, it will take that into account when changing things within the save. And this note is super important. You can only do this before you create a save. If you're midway through a save, you cannot do this. Changing these files will make no difference unless you start a brand new save. You have to know what you want before you begin it, and then go in and it should work just fine. That's just super important. So how do we find and get to this stuff? Well, that is fairly straightforward, but there's a couple of caveats there too. Now, mine is slightly different to yours, as I have my games saved on a separate SSD, whereas a lot of you might just be using them on the standard one with Steam. So it's wherever your games are installed, basically. Often that will be under Steam Library, and then what you're really looking for is the Steam Apps folder. It could be in program files. I'm really not sure. It may change from computer to computer, basically. Once you're there, you basically go Steam Apps, Common, and then you obviously want to select the game that you're actually playing, in this case, Football Manager 2024. Although, as far as I'm aware, this will work for previous FMs as well. Obviously, click it. Then you want to go to Data, Database, DB, that's just the word database like 3 times, and then find the latest version of your game file, which will be, at the moment anyway, 2400. But bearing in mind, when there are updates to the game at some point, it often creates new folders which break name fixes and stuff like that. If that's the case, you will have to move your files into a new folder that is the most recent one. Then we go to EDT, then we go to Permanent, and voila, this is what we're looking for, this folder. And these are the .edt files that the game has by default, including the transfer embargo one that I just showed you. Now, as far as I'm aware, for this you can actually create your own brand new EDT file, and the game should read it, but to make sure that it works and to follow the method I'm exactly using, that's not what we're going to do here. We're going to piggyback all of these changes onto the support.staff.edt file. So you're going to want to right click on it and then edit. Now, for you, it will probably pop up and ask you which app to use. Notepad is probably the best, but other things like that will work as well. As long as you can edit the file and save it, that's all that matters. When you open it, yours will look different to mine because obviously I've edited this already. You will see some stuff in this file, but I've not noticed any massive changes by deleting it, frankly, to start fresh. Though if you wanted to, you could just add this stuff as an addendum to the current file, in case you want to leave that stuff as it is. But to make things even easier for you, I've linked this exact file in the state that it's in right now in the description of this video, so that way you can download it and just overwrite the original one, and it will already be in the exact correct order to make things work for you, because I know that this configuration works. And then you should just be able to edit it from there and actually get the results that we're looking for, which I'll show you in a minute. So first things first, it's important for me to run you through what this stuff means so that you can use it while editing. Now, I realize this video might end up being quite long as I explain this stuff, but once you actually get doing this, you'll realize just how quick and easy this stuff is to do. There's just a lot of information which I kind of got to boil down first. But many elements of this are self-explanatory. So first we have detailed future regen. That tells the game what to do. The next box here we have for the first name, which of course I've put in Aaron. We leave this one blank for the moment. And then obviously Walker, which is his surname, in the third box along here. This middle one is for a common name, the sort of thing you often see on Brazilian players where they use a different name in the game to what you see actually into their personal information. So if I put Walkerinho into this box right now, the game would call him Walkerinho instead of Aaron Walker. Now, some of these boxes can be left blank and some of them are mandatory in order for this to work, but it's important that if you are going to leave something blank, make sure that you don't delete the quotation marks, as that tells the game that there's something there and it can ignore it. But if you remove them, it switches up the whole order, so do not remove the quotation marks. Just fill in the stuff in between them or leave them blank. As far as I know, the only ones that are mandatory in order for this to work are first name and last name, obviously, a date of birth in there too, skin tone and hair color, which are these two here, which I'll explain later, and the ID of the club that you want the player to spawn at, which is this one on the very end. But as with any of these things, you may have to play around if you're leaving out certain information or want to put extra stuff in as well. But I've created some pretty wild stuff already using different requirements, so I know that it can work in almost every scenario. I've yet to see one fail. And a massive shout out to General Gore over on the Discord, who did an awful lot of work on this on the back end of FM24 that really put this in a position where I could even do this. So if you do run into any problems with this or you have any queries, obviously drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to get back. But the best place, honestly, would be to go over to the Discord, which is linked in the description. I've created a special channel for queries related to this exact video, which you'll find in here. So I'll do my best to help, and I'm sure other members of the community will be happy to help you as well, because I know this can get a bit much. So after name, of course, we have date of birth. This, in theory, tells the game which year you want the player to actually be genned in, as the further into the future that you set this date, the younger the player will obviously be at the start of the game, and therefore the less likely they are to appear in the early years of the youth intakes. That's how it's supposed to work anyway, and how it has done for many years. However, in the beta, that's not exactly how it works, because at the moment, it's basically just taking any players you put in here and genning them no matter what birth date they have in the first season, hence the 20,000-year-old child. However, oddly, it does actually listen to this information if you have multiple players spawning at the same club. At that point, it will take into account their year of birth in order to prioritize which year of the youth intakes they come through. So for the moment, the beta workaround, if you did want a player to spawn further into the future, would be to create a few more players that are sort of dummy players that have like maybe one PA, so they're not actually relevant, and set their birthdays to be slightly sooner than the guy that you actually want, so that they'll generate first and then eventually the game will get to him in the end. Because using this method currently, you can only generate one player at a single club at any one time. You can have players gen up multiple clubs in the same year, but not two at the same club in the same year. We'll circle back to that later and I can show you exactly how that will look once we get going to editing this properly. The next box is obviously the player's nationality or country. This has to be listed exactly as it's written in the game so it knows what it is. With slightly longer country names, you may want to do a bit of testing with just simming them one season to make sure that they actually work before you commit to anything, so you could find out the exact right wording to use for certain country names. I'm looking at you, Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. The next box along here is the player's favorite club. This is not the club the player will spawn at, it is simply that bit you see in the information sometimes, and the club ID will need to go in here. If you're unsure of how to find the ID for the club you're looking for, load up your game, and the first thing you're going to want to do is go into Preferences. Once you're in Preferences, go over to Interface and make sure that Show Screen ID and Title Bar to assist skinning is turned on. What this will then allow you to do is go to any club in the game of your choosing, and it will show you the ID of the club in the top bar. It also works for players and various other factors in the game. So if I wanted to set Aaron's favorite club as Brighton, I could put 618 in this box and it would add that, but I normally just leave this blank. The next three boxes here relate to ethnicity, skin tone, and hair color. Now I'm going to link to this article in the description which explains what each of those numbers actually mean and which one you'd want to select when you're creating your player. So you can see that it shows the different numbers that relate to different ethnicities, the different ones that relate to skin tone, and the same for hair colors. The only note I have for this is that setting hair color to 0 at the moment does not seem to work, so you'll need to pick a different number. As much as I don't believe the ethnicity one is actually mandatory, I normally set it anyway just to make sure. The brilliant article also contains information about many other things which I'm showing you, so I would make sure you check this out. But a quick note about this article, the order that is listed up here at the top is incorrect. The one I provided you in that file is the correct order, which I got thankfully from Fidney in the comments, but this is the one that will work properly down here, and if you've got the file that I've sent you, then it shouldn't matter because the order should already be correct for you. After that, we've got two more boxes. This relates to height and weight in centimeters and in kilograms, which is extremely important, so you just put in the centimeter value and the kilogram value here should you want want to set that stuff, I often leave them blank. Make sure that it's just the number. Don't put like cm or kg in here, or the game won't know what to do with it. So if I wanted my player to be 190 centimeters, I would just put 190 in there. This last blank box here relates to the preferred foot. Again, calling back to the RCU, you can see the different values that you can set for that in there as well. But as always, you don't have to. The next one is a slightly strange one. This is where you can tell the game what position you want it to gen the player in, but this is a little bit strange in that there are only certain positions in the game that you can actually get it to work with. For some reason, DMs and wingbacks do not seem to work whatsoever. It could just be because no one's actually discovered the correct code for them yet, so that may change. But at the moment, as far as I'm aware, you can't touch those. But not to worry, as you can see, all the different options are listed again down here. But you do need to make sure that you get the exact spelling correct and all the right places and the right things. The next box here is the city of birth for your player in question. So if you want them to be from somewhere very specific in the country of your choosing, rather than just most likely from where the club is from, you need to put that in here. But it's extremely important that what we're putting in here is not the name of the city, it is the ID in the game of the city, in the same way that it is for the club. As every facet of FM has a unique ID attached to it, and that's what it's looking for. The downside to that, though, is they're not visible in game in the same way that other things are, like stadiums. You can't see the ID of cities in the game just by using the skinning thing, sadly. The only way to actually find out the ID of the city is to use the pre-game editor, go in there and search for it, and then you'll be able to find the city ID from there. But of course, we can't do that at the moment because we don't have access to the pre-game editor until the full game comes out. You'll be able to do that, no doubt, when you're later in the year and watching this video, but for now, we're limited. But what I am going to show you how to do is how to do it on the FM23 editor, which should still work, but also just translate that to FM24 once the full game's out. So just load up the editor as you would normally, go down to cities, click this box on the right, and it will give you a list of a load of cities. Then you're going to want to add a condition, hit the name, and for this case, we're just going to look up Brighton. So just type Brighton into this box here, hit it, and it should take you to the Brighton city thingy, which will then show you there on the left the unique ID. So that is what you would put in that box if you were setting him to be from Brighton very specifically. And that should work fine in FM24 as well, but you could use the FM23 editor if you have the game to do this as well, provided the cities haven't changed. That could happen. I think I might have confused myself slightly just to make sure. This one here is for the city. This one here is for the player's favorite number. So if they want to wear number 9, then you put a number 9 in this box, and the city number will go in this box next to it. I told you it's confusing. I'm even confusing myself. And these last 3 boxes are all fairly simple. This box here relates to the player's current ability. That is their CA number between 1 and 200. You can leave these blank as well if you want and let the game decide what's fair, but I normally leave specifically this one blank especially. Nearly there now. And in the last box, we have the player's potential ability. Again, this is ranked between 1 and 200, where 1 is, I was going to say me, but honestly, let's be honest, I'm more of a -50, and 200 is Lionel Messi. And lastly, we have the club ID. This is the ID of the club that the player will spawn at. So in this case, 629 is Chelmsford City. That's how we got Aaron to gen there. And obviously, you'll find the club ID in the same way that you were for their preferred club. And you'll, if anything, you'll be using this version way more. But at this point, provided you have entered all this information correctly in this, you should just then be able to save the file up here, and you're good. And it's worth noting that you can use this same file to create, in theory, as many of these as you like. I know General Gore actually had up to 1,000 of them working last year, and let's be honest, most of you are not going to want to do that anyway, so you should be fine with, I've tested it with plenty so far. Before you jump into your proper save that you're committed to, always maybe do like a quick simulation just to make sure that everything's working. But if you do want to make more players, all you're going to want to do is copy this from here, go to the end of the line, hit enter, and then just paste it in again, and you'll have a second line now that the game will read in that order. And then you can just go through and edit this one to your heart's content. And just pulling it back to what I was saying earlier about how it won't let you generate 2 players at the same club in the same year, it will take priority based on the player's birth date. So say we wanted both of these players to come through at Chelmsford City, but in different years, if we were to say push Aaron's brother here, Abel, back by a year to 2009 for his birthday, that would cause Aaron to come through the first year and Abel to come through the second year. However, were I to remove Aaron and leave Abel's birthday as it was, he would still generate in the first season. He would just be way too young. So say hypothetically you wanted to make a player come through in the 4th year of the save. At the moment, this is the workaround that I've found for that until such time as the game starts paying attention to birth dates again. So all I've done is I've created 3 players that will gen in each of these years, which it will follow because they're the same club. And I've set their PAs to 1, which means they're basically going to be useless youth intake fodder that you'll never see. But then in the 4th year, you'll actually get the proper player. I haven't tested this exact format right now, but I can't see any reason why it wouldn't work. And there may well be some stuff I'm missing about how you can get it to generate the players not in the first season without having to do this. And I'm sure there is. But if you do know, let me know. I know that last year it was fine, but this year there seems to be some weird issues with the beta. And another thing that's important to know, and I think this is really cool, is that you do not have to have the league switched on for the player to generate at that club. I've tested any number of scenarios to make sure this works, including literally spawning him at a Burundian side in a nation that's unplayable with the league not switched on, with only the Premier League switched on a small database, and it was still enough for him to generate into the game. Every possible scenario I tested, he worked, including non-playable leagues in Europe with clubs that are never going to compete in European competitions either, including like lower division Cypriot sides. I still got him to generate without a single problem using the tiniest database possible. So it should be fine for any database setup as far as I'm aware. But just bringing this back to default for the moment, were I to save this file right now and then go into a new save, a brand new save, and then sim to that first youth intake date for Chelmsford in this case, Aaron Walker would appear in that database and he would be right there, as you can see from this one where I generated him at a different Cypriot side in this case. Hopefully this was clear enough. I realized there was a lot of information to cover in this video, but I wanted to make sure that I did in fact cover it all to try to sort of get ahead of any queries. But if you do have those, of course, you know to send them in the comments or into the Discord as well. Refer to the article that I linked as well, because a lot of the information I'm covering, in fact almost all of it, you'll find in there as well, other than some things that I've also found myself. Just wanted to show you this as proof that on a default setup you can get them to gen 1 year after the other. This was Aaron who gen in the first year. Of course he's now moved to Norwich, but he's still he did gen at Chelmsford. If you go into Chelmsford, we will see Abel, his younger brother, who is now genned there as well in the following year because his birthday was 1 year later. But that should, in theory, cover all the bases. So if you have enjoyed this video, and I really hope you have, this has been a really fun one to make, drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you are new. I've got all sorts of stuff coming up in the coming week, especially with related to the skin, which is going to be coming out soon, hopefully. Brand new database setup, scouting guide, all that good stuff coming up soon. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, hold your gun, capybara, bye-bye.